Is this bunker attack a war crime? To start, if you want to use this as a briefing or hip pocket training for your soldiers or for a class presentation, my whole PowerPoint is on my website. You can get to it from the link below. Now, YouTube has been a little weird about showing combat footage lately. In some circumstances, it seems like you can't even show soldiers firing their weapons, even if you don't show anyone getting hit. This is why you saw me put up the disclaimer training footage in my video about the Bradley, because it's training footage, and I don't trust a YouTube reviewer to identify that a Bradley is just doing gunnery table 8 by himself. So the real problem here is the catch raw footage of armed conflict without injuries. Videos that show that get demonetized or limited ads, and when your ads are limited, you really get pushed to the bottom of the algorithm because YouTube wants to make money. I get that. I also want people to see these videos and understand what's going on in the world and what's going on with the military. So I'm going to try something different. I'm going to create two videos. One is for YouTube, which is heavily censored audio and video. The other is on my Substack, uncensored, and you can get to my Substack below. I set my Substack fee at like $5, the lowest it can be, because I want this to be accessible to the average person, or pay like $50 to get it for a year. So to start, here's some background. This video appeared on Russian Telegram and made its way to Twitter. It shows a Russian soldier assaulting a Ukrainian OPLP, or observation post listening post. I know I said bunker in the video description. It's really more like an OP as opposed to a hardened bunker, but not everybody knows what an OP is. The Ukrainian soldiers don't surrender fast enough, and the Russian soldier shoots both of them. And we're going to go over it frame by frame here. A couple of things to start. I think this video is real. Some people suggested that it may be fake because there was no blood, but that might not necessarily appear all that quickly, and the resolution of the GoPro camera that the soldier who was assaulting the position was wearing wasn't all that good. Another thing to note, the Ukrainian soldier here has a yellow armband. This also feels real to me because the Russian soldier is hesitating, making mistakes, and some soldiers aren't taking proper cover. Nobody likes to take a knee or get down in the prone when it's cold and wet outside, and you have no idea when you're going to be able to change uniforms next. So if it's a fake, it's a really good fake. Second, the real war crime here is that Russia invaded Ukraine to begin with. So let me just lay that out there right now. I'm going to come to some conclusions in this video that some people might not like. I am definitely on Ukraine's side, but I call things as I see it. And if I don't see a war crime, then I don't see a war crime. But keep in mind that a real war crime is the invasion in the first place. Now, some people have suggested that this is the Wagner group doing the fighting. I can't tell from the quality of the video. Here's what I can gather from the video. The attack was conducted from the rear of the OPLP. This must have been a terrifying situation for the Ukrainian soldiers, because the enemy is not supposed to come from the flanks or the rear. Now, I was never flanked in Iraq. Iraq was always more like, hey, Ryan, drive down that road. We want to see what happens. But when I was OPFOR, or the opposing force, literally the bad guys in Germany, I was a subject of a few NATO flanking attacks. And let me tell you, when things go wrong, they go wrong really fast. Sometimes you have no idea what's going on until it's too late. So this Russian soldier somehow gets around the OPLP's rear. He throws a grenade at the OPLP. Then he assaults the OPLP. Now, someone starts shouting, "Friendly, friendly," and I think it's this person to the right. This has led some people to believe that perhaps the person assaulting was wearing a Ukrainian uniform, or maybe a Ukrainian yellow or blue armband. Now, wearing your adversary's uniform or markings is called a ruse de guerre, and it falls under the perfidy prohibition of the law of land warfare, kind of in the same vein as faking surrender. You can't wear your adversary's uniform or insignia. But I think these soldiers, these Ukrainian soldiers who were sitting in this OPLP, they were just so surprised that someone was coming up from behind them that they just assumed it was friendly fire. So could the person who had filmed this been wearing a Ukrainian uniform or armband? I can't tell. Maybe. If you're an attorney and you would go to court this evidence, let me know in the comments below. The Russian moves forward, and what happens next happens pretty darn fast. It looks like there are 3 Ukrainians in the trench. One in the middle is either dead or dying. The one to the left is probably wounded, most likely concussed. And the one on the right may be wounded and concussed as well. We really can't tell from the footage. Now, it looks like the soldier to the left is just done. There's a term called hors de combat. It basically means out of action due to damage or injuries. People who are hors de combat are no longer lawful combatants. So Is the guy on the left or Ducombe? I don't know. He certainly looked like he was no longer a threat. He wasn't holding a weapon, and he looked wounded, at least enough that maybe I would have hesitated as well. But I wasn't there. I didn't have to make the decision that happens next. Now, the soldier on the right is still armed. This is the threat right here. But for some reason, the Russian soldier doesn't shoot him. Instead, he tries to take the guy's gun away. And I'm sure the Russian here is thinking, please don't make me kill you. And I believe this because I've thought the same thing. I thought, please don't make me do this. And there was a time once when I was in a bunker with my machine gunner, and he said to me, Sergeant, I don't want to kill anyone. And I remember cursing at him and sending him into the command post to get on the radio and have the radio man sent out to me to take over the gun. In hindsight, that was actually probably a bad decision because that radio is probably only secondary in importance to the machine gun at that moment. If you freeze up on the machine gun, you could freeze up on the radio too. And if you freeze up on the radio, everybody could die. But I made a decision. And I remember taking that gun while he was headed inside. And I didn't want to kill anybody either. So most soldiers have an extreme aversion to killing. For 18 years of your life, you're told killing is wrong, killing is wrong, killing is wrong. And then you get an 8-week course or a little bit longer if you're in the Marines, and you're handed a rifle and you're told, okay, go kill. And that just doesn't square with a lot of soldiers. So you do see people hesitate. This is one of the reasons why a lot of soldiers practice on pop-up targets. The target comes up, you see it, you immediately fire, target goes down. They teach, the Army and the Marine Corps teaches you how to kill. They don't always teach you that it is okay to kill. And I think that's where a lot of PTSD comes from. If you're curious, there's a book called On Combat by Colonel Grossman. And it's a pretty interesting study of when people shoot their weapons. Now, regarding these weapons, most soldiers have an extreme aversion to having their weapon taken away. This is ingrained in you. And this Ukrainian soldier is fighting to maintain hold of his weapon. It's this muscle memory. No one takes your weapon. This is drilled into you from day one in basic training. Eventually, the Russian soldier decides that he's being way too generous, and he steps back and decides to kill both of them. Now, if you look over to the left, in the last couple of milliseconds of this man's life, he's trying to surrender. His hands are coming up. It may be to come up to surrender, or it may be to block the bullets from the rifle. I need a minute. It gets better, but it never goes away. All right, let's keep going. And then the Russian soldier kills them both. Then the Russian soldier hops out of the OPLP and prepares for counterattack. Note that once you take an objective, one of the first things you do is prepare for counterattack, because your adversary is going to want to counterattack while you're still consolidating and doing accountability of your soldiers and your equipment. This is where you can see two more Russian soldiers, one on his right and one on his left, taking cover against a tree. My guess is that these soldiers were forward of the bunker's position, and they came up once the bunker was secure. This indicates to me that these Russian soldiers were preparing for counterattack in the direction that the assaulting soldier came from, which leads me to believe that this is the most likely avenue of approach for any counterattacking force, so the Ukrainians are that way. This points even more strongly to the theory that this was a flanking maneuver or an encirclement of this Ukrainian OPLP. Now, like I said in the beginning, neither of them want to get on the ground because they're going to take a knee and it's wet and it's cold. So that's another thing that it kind of flicks into my mind that this is realistic. So final thoughts. I would have preferred that the soldier only shoot the man to the right, but in the heat of the moment, he made a mistake. And again, I will say that the real war crime here is that Russia was in Ukraine in the first place. But in this particular situation, I believe that a war crime was not committed by this particular soldier at this particular event. Is it a tragedy? Absolutely. You have a split second to make a decision. And I think this soldier gunned down one innocent man and one threat. There is an additional explanation. Some people have said that the soldier who was recording and doing the assaulting was actually Ukrainian, and the men in the trench are Russian, and they were wearing different uniforms. Maybe, but I don't think so, because that would mean that the soldiers to the left and right would have set up facing the opposite direction when they prepared for counterattack. So one final thought. Calling everything a war crime lessens the power of the word. So be very careful in applying the word war crime, lest we render it meaningless. This was not a war crime. This was war. If you want the PowerPoints, this block of instruction, or some hip pocket training, you can find it on my website. I'll also link to it in the pinned comments below. Again, if you want to see the full unedited version of this video, you can take a look at my Substack. And thank you so much for watching.